Tuesday the 14th of June. Can I remind people this meeting is being held remotely and also in person, and will be filmed and recorded live and subsequent broadcast available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record Council's meeting to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during this process will be retained in accordance with the Council's published policies and available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established meeting protocol, including around the use of the chat facility, and the comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invite to the meeting. So I'm glad that's the first time I've had to do that, and I'll need to do it again in the education bit. So with that, can I ask for apologies, substitution and declaration of interest, and then we'll go to the roll call.
We have no apologies for this community's part of the business. We will have an apology later for the education part of the meeting from Councillor Maguire with Councillor McCabe substituting. The convener will now move to a roll call. Can the following members...
Can I bring Kirsty in first of all, Kirsty?
It was just to declare an interest on two things on agenda item 2. The first, on the water institution, I am registered as a volunteer, and on the second, for the Caddo Hill Community Green Space, I have a family interest in that project. I don't feel like it will impact anything for this meeting.
Okay, thank you, Kirsty. And obviously for myself, it will be in for quite leisure, and probably item number 2. Lynn?
Quite leisure as well, thank you. Now move to a roll call. Can the following members please indicate if they're present at the meeting, either in person or remotely? Councillor Armstrong.
Present in chambers.
Councillor Brennan.
Present in chambers.
Councillor Clockerty.
Present, chambers.
Councillor Daisley.
Present in chambers.
Councillor Law.
Present in chambers.
Councillor Maguire. Councillor Maguire.
Present remotely.
Councillor McVeigh.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Moran.
Remotely.
Councillor Quinn.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Robertson.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Wilson.
Remotely for this part of the proceedings.
And there are no more declarations of interest.
Now, it would be my intention, as you can see the agenda item we have on new business, the school transport contracts at number 13. That's part of this part of the agenda. So I would intend to take that after agenda item number 5. And that is in private session. So if that's okay, we'll carry on with that. So the Councillor Wilson, we are. I'm monitoring the chat, David, but you've got your hand
All
up, so I want to come in.
I'm sorry, I didn't realise that school contracts would be part of this just now. I must declare an interest as chair of the Operations Committee at SPT that really has a lot to do with the school transport. I don't think my involvement is such that I should leave the chamber.
Okay, David, thanks for that. Okay, so again, just for members, I am monitoring the chat. I know we've been using hybrid of hands up and chats, but when there's so many people, it's easier just to put it in the chat function. So you can use the chat function for any questions. And with that, I'll move on to agenda item number 2, and I'll invite Tony to prepare that agenda item. Tony?
It's actually Hugh's going to present this one, sorry, convener.
Okay. Hugh?
Thanks very much, Convener. Good afternoon, councillors. This is a update on the capital programme and progress with asset-related items that's going on at the moment. Just in the first page of the report, and under the recommendations, we had to have emergency power reports to get approved for the movable floor at Marnock Leisure, and also for the King George building in Port Glasgow, and these have been agreed to you in the paper. I'll take you a quick tour of where we are with some of our capital projects. I'm not going to go through them all, but any questions you'd like to ask, you can ask at the end if you want to. Lady Alice Bowling Club, again, as you see within my report, the work is all agreed now. The additional money has been approved, and also this work's to commence on site in September 2022. Indoor tennis, there was a paper taken to the members' working group on Friday, and this will go further to another process and working with our partners to take the next stage in looking for a better solution to the indoor tennis. Number 5.3 on it is the leisure pitches and the life skill. Just to bring to your attention the Battery Park. We've managed to, in partnership with Morton Community Trust, to secure £150,000 to support the upgrade of the new carpet. That work will commence in August, and the other work in Dunshaughney Road will also be out for tender at present. I'm not going to touch on everything, but just to let you know that the Grieve Road community facility has now been completed, and obviously if there's any other comments on that, I'm quite happy to take questions. Let's go to 4.7 on the waterfall floor, movable floor. Is that the work has now been agreed and it's now been accepted, and there is now Eddie to give more details on this. That the work is now progressing to have on site. We're looking for a start date either later on this year or beginning of next year. Inverclyde Leisure are aware of the situation and putting things in place to make sure if the pool is closed for a period of time, there is a backup for that. 5.8 is that we again, it's now waiting for approval to go to tender, waiting for approval to accept the contract. Again, any more details on this work, Eddie's here to take that in to do it. We had to get some more money from Scottish Government due to the increased cost of the build, and we are now successfully got a full budget to take this forward and hope to commence that as soon as we possibly can. The other work that is out of the council scope at the moment, and these are works through the Regeneration Capital Fund, Craig End Resource Centre. Phase 1 of the work is now complete. Phase 2, the work of upgrading the car park area, is ongoing, and it should be finished later on this year. I'm delighted to say that the Inverclyde Shed building in East Blackhall Street is now commenced. After having a major concern about the cost of that facility. That facility was £200,000 over, came in back from tender £2,000 over, but we were delighted that we managed to get additional money through the regeneration to support that, and this work has started, and we're hoping for that work to be finished either later this year or next year, early next year. Branching out community centres, 1.1 money is now, the work is now started on a design team for that work, and that work will be hopefully started later on this year or beginning of the next calendar year. Asset transferred is now under this capital report. What it is, we've now set up a working group to look at all requests coming in. That's chaired by Tony McEwen, who's the head of Culture, Communities and Education Resources, and that meets on a regular basis to look at ongoing asset transfer, and you can see under 7.2 two ongoing pieces of work around that. Ruth and Tony will probably come in and want to talk about, Ruth or Tony will want to come in and talk about Dunshaughney Road, but there is a report going to the ENR around the overall work for that. I'm happy to take any questions or anything else. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, I'll quickly put to either Tony or Ruth, do you wish to elaborate on Dunshaughney Road?
I can come in on Dunshaughney Road. So basically the condition of the building is the significant factor here, and we know that there's one group particularly interested in that, and they've asked us for more time to look at possible funding and possible funding sources. We met with them yesterday, and we're trying everything we possibly can to look at the condition and the condition of the building, the amount it needs spending on it, and also the availability of the group, particularly to be able to put in some funding and we're giving them support.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. I'll go to members' questions. Tommy first.
Yes, thanks, Convener. Question for Hugh and maybe two for Ruth. I just wondered if Mr. Scott can
confirm we have cost certainty on the Lady Alice project, and also for Ruth. As you know, Ruth, there's a lot of pressure on the capital budget, cost increasing, and you've alluded to that in some of the sections of the report here. Going forward, what impact do you think these factors are going to have on the various projects within this committee? And do you see a time coming where we maybe have to review and reassess everything, obviously subject to funding, which we're aware of? Thanks.
I'll let Hugh come in first on the Lady Alice, and then Ruth can take the bigger picture. Hugh?
Thanks yourself, Convener. We have fully committed to cost certainty. We have it in writing from the club and the solicitors that the overall spend is now 260, and that was in the overall budget that the council was given extra, and we're confident that everything will be met within the core budget. And we've got confirmation back from the club now that they are more satisfied with the work that's going on for that. So we don't expect to have any other costs at the present moment.
Thank you. And Ruth, do you want to give us on the bigger capital?
So of course, there are capital pressures across the board. We have the New Ways of Working project, which is where we're looking at the estate for the council, and also looking at the leisure estate as part of movements going forward. We don't even have to just factor in the cost of build and repairs. We also have to factor in the cost of net zeros going forward. So there's no getting away from the fact that the future for the capital project is looking difficult for us. So what I would say about the different projects is we need to keep working through them. We need to keep getting to cost certainty, making sure we're getting the best value for the public pound, and then taking back to user members as to the priorities that you inevitably will have to consider in future months and years.
Thanks, Ruth.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Convener.
Any other questions? No questions online? I suppose my only comment would be, I mean, we can see some of the major projects come to fruition, and really happy that Lady Alice is finally come to closure for me. I think that's one we've been working on for a long time, yourself and Natasha. And the movable floor again has been one that has been on for a number of times, so I'm really happy that that's coming to fruition as well. So with that, can we agree with recommendations in the paper? Thank you. And we move on to agenda item number 3, which is the community update report. And again, I'll invite Tony first of all to come in that for them.
Thank you very much, Convener. So this report provides a committee with communities aspects, community updates for committee and some of the pertinent issues that have come through. I'll not go through everything on the report, but I suppose just some of the main points is in terms of the review of crawl spaces and their 3G pitches. We're proposing to continue with the provision. We did pilot it, and we will be able to resource the opening and closing of the pitches that have been detailed in the report. That's at Inverclyde Academy, Broomhill, Drumshanty, and for the first time as well, Weemsbay Primary School. As you know, it's quite a challenging thing to do is keep these pitches open, but we are confident that they're being well used. We are monitoring it closely, and that most of the kind of antisocial behaviour or anything that happens as a result of that has been because the crawl space has perhaps been open at night, but we've now got a dedicated resource to close it. Although I'm not saying that will mean that there are absolutely no instances of antisocial behaviour, but we will obviously keep an eye on it. And I think just to be clear, the most important thing around these pitches is to make sure that they're safe for the people that use them. So it's important that they're checked and ready to be used by either those who are letting them or for community use as well. So hoping, I was just asking committee to note that we'll be using the resource to keep the opening and closing of crawl spaces at those locations. The Child Poverty Action Report is currently being finalised for the Year 4, and that will go to the Alliance Board, and we'll bring back the full report to this committee once the Alliance Board has approved it. In terms of the affordable holiday hubs, we've been given 131,000 from the Scottish Government to provide affordable childcare. And I've detailed in the report the models that will be deployed, and that's the normal play schemes that we normally provide in the locations. There's an extended play scheme which offers longer sessions for people who are perhaps working all day, and an enhanced play scheme as well for children with additional support needs. And that's in addition to the Play for All that we operate at Craigmarlow School. Obviously, the £131,000 doesn't, not able to have an extensive play scheme provision right across, but I suppose the aim of the funding is for affordable childcare for working families and also families that are experiencing deprivation. So it's just to say that's how the affordable childcare budget will be spent this year. Some really good news in the Young Scot annual report, and I would urge members to note especially the use that young people have with Young Scot, and also just to let you know that the access to free sanitary products, the good service that we're providing has continued. The budget's slightly down than it was last year, so we're going to have to review some of the service we provide, like the home delivery, and we might have to refine that a bit. But the budget is down slightly from last year. I don't know why. So it's been allocated by Scottish Government. And just an update on Culture Collective, which is the fund that's been provided through by Creative Scotland to support grassroots and arts movements within areas. So the money doesn't essentially come to the council, but we use it to coordinate a lot of cultural providers through Inverclyde, and we were really pleased to see that it's been extended by another year, and we received an additional 198,000, so that's enabling us to go even further with that. And just a final note on the free swimming, that we'll bring a further report back to the next committee on that when we've got full analysis of the usage and some options for how we might go forward with that. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tony. Looking for questions, Jim?
Thanks, convener. Just firstly, a comment on welcoming the decision to open the crawl spaces on the 3G pitches. There's been concerns around kids accessing the pitches by climbing really high fences, raised to me. So it's a really good decision, I think. Added to that, the decision to now include Weems Bay 3G pitch, and that is fantastic, with Ward 6 now benefiting from 2 3G pitches open. So thank you for that. I've got one question about that. So, Tony, can you confirm exactly when the crawl spaces will be open? So in the report it alludes to when they're not being let. Is that all year round, evenings, weekends, just in school holidays? Thank you.
Yeah, so there will be reduced times in the winter because of the lack of lighting. So we will have them open at holiday periods and the weekend, and it's just whenever there is a let, whenever there are no lets on. So we'll continue. It's quite a difficult thing to manage because we often have to try and ask particularly young people to leave the pitch sometimes in order that the let can take place. But the idea is that it's kind of till dusk, I suppose, through the year, and so that they're well used and maximised.
Thanks.
Thank you, yeah.
Fantastic.
Thanks very much, convener. So it's a comment really rather than a question. It was just on 4.5, the access to free sanitary products. I've campaigned on period poverty for a number of years, along with other individuals locally and national organisations. So it's just to thank officers for all their work on doing here in Inverclyde to give that enhanced access to free sanitary products, and yeah, because it's just great in reducing the barriers to accessing these products for young women and girls locally and older women too. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. I'll pass that on to the team.
And I think it's fair to say that Inverclyde led the way on it as well. I mean, although we're talking about Scottish Government funding just now, we actually did lead the way on it, and it was thanks to elected members and Natasha, Elizabeth and Lynn that probably promoted it very much so within Inverclyde. So it was a well done to that joint effort. Open up to other questions. Anything else? Elizabeth, sorry.
Thanks, Camilla. The question I've got is really about the Child Poverty Action Report. And I'm looking at mainly the third bullet point then, 4.2, which is where we're talking about mitigating the cost of living by providing accessible and affordable childcare, blah, blah, all the things that we're doing there. And it's really that cost of living side of things, because we've had a child poverty action plan for a long time. We know that alleviation of child poverty is a huge concern for us. It's something that we really want to do, and it's something that's a high priority in terms of the Scottish Government as well. But the sort of tsunami of cost of living issues is massively overtaken, I think, what we would even have thought we were going to be looking at in terms of child poverty. And this is another one of my agility questions. Is our report, is our action plan agile enough to really move along with that and be ahead of it and make sure that the things that we're doing are scaled up to deal with what is a level of cost of living pressure that none of us foresaw?
If you want to take that from a corporate point.
So, and we can't escape from the huge cost of living crisis we are in. What I would say is our planning prior to this crisis has been solid. I think a lot of the decisions taken by the council have put extra money into pockets, and also significantly, as part of the work we've been doing through the listening events, is the council has recognised that the tolerance level for getting benefits sometimes could be increased, hence the work to increase the amount of community before getting free school meals. So that brings in, and I can't remember the exact amount, but it's in the hundreds of families who are then entitled to benefits where they might not be elsewhere in Scotland, and everything that also comes with that. So I think our planning prior to this cost of living crisis has been strong. I think we've put in a lot of preventative measures as much as we possibly can, given the fact that Inverclyde is also, I mean, if we look at our SIMD areas, we're living in areas of significant multiple deprivation. Could we do more? Of course we would like to do more, absolutely. But we have to make, I suppose what you're asking, challenging us as officers to do is making sure that we're looking for every opportunity, exploring every pound, and making sure that we're getting that into families' pockets. And I can assure you that we are. The particular look at the childcare. We have one of the highest uptakes of 2-year-olds, vulnerable 2-year-olds. So again, we were already making sure that we were getting people into childcare as early as possible for a variety of reasons. We have a mixed picture around after-school care, where some families are wanting to take it up and other families are not. And I think we'll have to do some more work as we go on through the year about that. Sometimes the uptake is surprisingly low. And even when we were with the childcare through last summer, sometimes it wasn't needed, and of course that's understandable in the fact that people had different working patterns. Perhaps they didn't know what they needed, but there's always more we can do. But I think we are doing a lot and as much as we can be to get us to where we are today.
Okay, Elizabeth?
It's just thanks for that update. It's really helpful. And just a plea that I think we're going to have to run to keep ahead of this particular thing. And I would just hate for our plans and our action plans to lag. And I suppose that's just the challenge putting forward that we need to know. We need to stay ahead of it as much as we can. And although I don't know how we can, but we have to try. And the other thing I should have done, and this is an apology, I should have declared interests for 4.6 for the Beacon and Chaos Theatre Company. So put them in now.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. Is that okay? I'm going to bring Lynn in first and then back to yourself, James. Lynn?
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple of questions. So just first of all, under the crawl hole spaces, so absolutely delighted that Drumshanty, is it under, just turn that off, apologies, to start again. So just a quick question under the crawl holes. Absolutely delighted that the Drumshanty Road access is remaining open. That's been a huge benefit locally to the kids round about that area where, space is limited, where they can go and play. And delighted that we've extended that to Wimms Bay.
It's just that obviously I'd just like to highlight that Port Glasgow was the next one. When I had many a discussion about Drum Shanty, a number of people from Port Glasgow, and Councillor Mackenzie will be glad that I'm raising it today, have approached me to say that they would really welcome something there in terms of the Port Glasgow campus. That was another one highlighted. So just looking from equality of access, that Port Glasgow, we've kind of got each area covered, but Port Glasgow seems to be missing from there. So maybe just a few comment on to see if we could look into that as well. And also under the Affordable Holiday Hub, so fantastic news that we're getting that play scheme extended. Which I was really delighted with is the fact that it's got a full day cover from 8:30 to 5:30 and covers that lunchtime gap, because there's a number of questions raised about the universal scheme, the fact that you need to, if you're working all day, trying to get that cover for that hour in the middle of the day is proving difficult. So I was just wondering how we kind of overcame that barrier for the extended and if that could be applied to the universal. Thank you.
I'll bring Hugh in first regarding Port Glasgow, and then Tony. Hugh?
Yeah, thanks very much. Port Glasgow Joint Campus has a crawl hole at the other side of the top half of Port Glasgow, but also in Port Glasgow we've got two open football pitches down, one at Bogostone and one at Parkhill Avenue, and the upper pops ones. I know it's not AstroTurf, but they are open to the public and the young people at all times. They're not lockable, these ones. But there's a crawl hole up at the top of the joint campus that we're monitoring at the moment. There's a lot of football games over the season at the joint campus, so it's very hard to try and put that in there at the moment, but we'll keep it on our mind, Councillor.
Okay, Natalie.
Great, thank you.
Tony?
Yeah, I suppose the quick answer to how we managed to overcome it was funding. So I think the funding we got from the Scottish Government has allowed us to plan these affordable childcare in such a way that we're able to offer, in some cases, the all day. So it essentially does come down to that, and any other, I can't see any other way around it from that. So that's why we were able to do that and that for those play schemes essentially.
And I'll let Ruth comment as well. Ruth?
Yes, when we were looking at it, we had to have a balance between people who wanted activities and people who wanted childcare and the different reasons people attended. And when we do the full day, we're essentially, you have to put on 3 times the staff because you've got the length of day. So it's a more expensive model. So we've tried to get a balance of something in every area for people wanting childcare. So it's an extended day, but also something that is more affordable for us to run. That's for activities across the whole of the park as well.
Okay, thanks. James?
Thanks, Kevina. Just a question around affordable holiday hubs again. So there was a concern raised to me, and I brought it up with Tony just before the meeting, around Inverkip. So the question is, and the play scheme in Inverkip was temporarily transferred from Weems Bay to Inverkip while the 3G pitch was being worked on. I believe that was last year or the year before. But since the work's been concluded, the play scheme hasn't been transferred back to Weems Bay again. Can you just confirm where we are with it?
Tony?
Yes, so from speaking to IL, the play scheme hasn't operated at Weems Bay since 2018, and we have, apart from that one time where Inverkip was being refurbished, so I suppose the Inverkip play scheme was essentially located in Weems Bay. So I don't know what happened prior to 2018, and that's what I'm looking at. But ultimately, the funding that we give through the Community Grants Fund goes to Inverkip community to run the play scheme. So there's no provision at Weems Bay, and that would really be up to IL to decide whether or not they would offer that provision.
James?
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Weems Bay parents say they've got posters going back to 2013, and 2 parents have told me there was a play scheme there for at least 15 years, if not 20 years. So it goes back a long time. And I think within the community, there's a lot of concern that for
perfectly valid reasons. I think when the pitches were being replaced, the play scheme went to Inverkip, but they certainly want and expected it to come back. Thank you.
Yeah, the villages, we specifically haven't got enough funding to be able to do the both villages. So when we're looking at Inverkip and Wednesday, then we've tried to produce something geographically across Inverclyde, and also to put the longer play schemes into the waterfront as well. And we know that a lot of the families can get to the waterfront. So yes, I appreciated that we're not able to do everything, and there's always a compromise here. But but we've worked hard to try and get something across the whole of Inverclyde, but we haven't been able to get it in both Inverkip and Greaves today as well.
I'm okay.
Thank you.
Okay. We've got a comment from Councillor Wilson. David, do you want to give us?
No, it's just an observation to back up what you said. That the pitches at the shared campus in Port Glasgow are very busy. You've got a lot of training going on, a lot of games going on, and currently there is a problem with youth interrupting games, particularly with the real youngsters. And I've had several complaints, and I've managed to get the our people up there to try and do something. But I certainly don't necessarily think a crawl hole is the answer.
Thanks for your comments, and I think Tony's probably expressed your fears as well. One of the problems we've got is clearing a pitch of youth in order to actually have proper legs played as well. So I mean that'll be ongoing, and we always get a report on crawl holes, and no doubt we'll get a further one at some point in the near future. I'm going to bring us in agenda item to an end. The only thing I would say is, again, Tony mentioned it, but I would need to again commend Eunice's team over our young Scott Cup. I think it's a tremendous achievement, and I think it's one of the things that Inverclyde's noted for nationally about the number of people who have managed to get through the young Scott. So again, I think it's a well done in place. But a thanks to all your teams, Tony and Hugh, for getting that through. I think it's a fitting that cap. So well done all. And with that, can I agree the recommendations? Can I move to agenda item number 4, which again is an agenda item for new members. This was actually came to the committee from a member request from Councillor Brooks. And obviously this is an answer to Councillor Brooks's request. So I'll let Ruth introduce this paper. Ruth.
So as Councillor Buckley said, this is a new from full council asking us to consider establishing and promoting control of bleed kits across Inverclyde. And to give an example of what a control of bleed kit is, it's when somebody has a significant bleed incident, and it doesn't have to be a stabbing, although it's connected with a young boy, Daniel Baird, who was stabbed outside a nightclub. Then that it's a group of bandages basically that can give immediate first aid, and the Daniel Baird Foundation was founded on the fact that if immediate first aid had been available for Daniel, he may well have survived. So we started looking into control of bleed kits, and the first question in our research was where would we site these if these were static kits, and we spoke to the police, and the police said in their recommendation they wouldn't make them static, they would make them mobile, and quite often the police or the community wardens would be first responders into such an incident. So we've been working with the police, Scottish Fire and Rescue, and also our own community wardens as part of the community safety partnership to say that these could be fitted to vehicles. So the warden vehicles, the police vehicles, and the fire vehicles. We also thought that we could look at a promotional campaign. The bleed kits are fairly small to carry, and we're thinking that people may want to consider carrying these as part of everyday life, or people might want to consider having them in clubs. So we thought, we're advocating a promotional campaign for control of bleed kits. And also in discussion with the police, They were saying that obviously nightclubs and even clubs are probably the biggest risk area for where you would have a significant bleed incident. So we're asking you to remit it to the licensing board to consider whether it would be appropriate to attach a condition or a recommendation that that licensed premises should hold a controlled bleed kit. We're hoping through promotion that they would consider that anyway, without having to do it through the licensing department. But that we would and that would be part of the promotional campaign. Happy to take any questions, but hopefully a good news story.
Okay, thanks for that, Ruth. I'll open up to questions. Kirsty?
Thank you, Convener. One thing I would like to ask about the kits themselves is, would they require any specific training to use, or can any member of the public certainly just pick one up and help in an emergency?
They are designed for first person on the scene, so the kits are designed for anybody, so we don't need specialist training. But if with the kit comes a training video as to how to use it, but basically they're designed for the first person who comes across bleed.
James?
Thanks, Convener. Just firstly, I think it's a fantastic initiative that could be vital in saving lives across Inverclyde. There is no mention of any campaign going into schools to raise awareness. Is this something that was discussed? Is it appropriate? Could it be included in the plan?
Ruth?
So we already worked through No Knives, Better Lives about instances of violence. It would be up to, because the most of the first aid where it would be required, the police would be first responders, and we wouldn't be our intention would be to put anything specific into schools about it. But of course we can do some of the promotion around it as well as the rest of Inverclyde, but nothing specifically for schools.
Thanks.
Okay. David?
Yeah, I'd just like to compliment Ruth on the report and also compliment my young prodigy, Councillor Brooks, for his initiative here. At first, when he explained it to me, I really didn't totally understand it. I now see the need for it, and I certainly will be supporting it.
Thanks, David. And probably only you can get away with calling Councillor Brooks young. So I'm looking to see if we get any other questions. Elizabeth?
I mean, I completely agree with Councillor Wilson. Not that Councillor Brooks is young, but it's a great report and it's something that we really should be supporting. Tiny concern is the notion of us asking the licensing board to put it as a condition on licensing. I wouldn't have thought that was within the scope of the licensing board to be able to do that, but I think we've had lots of experiences even prior to me being on the licensing board where we've had things that have been really good practice, where we've gone, this is a really good measure of public health, etc., and we've really encouraged through the licensing board and the licensing forum for the licensed trade to support us, and I'm sure they will, but I'm uncomfortable with the notion of a condition being put on licences because I don't think it's within the remit of the licensing board.
And that's where it's saying it's there to consider whether it would be appropriate to. So we're relating it to them to the consideration.
Okay, members. Again, it's one of these members, one of these initiatives. We've seen it with naloxone, and we've seen it hopefully that going forward with the heart start as well. It's an initiative to try and make sure that first responders are able to keep people alive. So again, I agree with all the comments. It's an excellent paper. So if we can agree, can I move on to agenda item number 5, which is single-use plastic bottles in educational establishments in Inverclyde Leisure. And I'll ask you to start off, Ms. Ruth.
Again, this is a report that was remitted by the council, and whilst we remitted to bring a report looking at the implications of ceasing to sell or provide single-use plastic bottles, hopefully this report goes slightly further and it shows the journey we are on to either ceasing to use or sell across the school and Inverclyde Leisure estate. So the proposals in 5.0 outline where we are in each of the different aspects of this, and I'll talk through them individually. So primary schools, by August 2022, we are hoping to be in a position where we will have ceased all use of all single-use plastic. You'll also know that the law has come in about certain types of single-use plastic, and we're working through that. A discussion this morning with Tony was basically saying we had a dilemma of the single use versus no use. For instance, if you've got a box full of plastic spoons, what the recommendation is they would rather they were used once than just simply binned. So we will have to download some of our stock. But we've been working hard with not only the young people themselves, but catering to look at the cessation of single-use plastic. And it's probably important to say that the young people have challenged us with looking at this as well. So when we look at replied conversations, and Michael and I have regular update meetings with the young people themselves, they've also said, what are we doing to save the planet and reduce use of single-use plastic? And the primary school pupils were not only worried about the use of them, but also about the litter. And so we've been doing a lot of work with the schools themselves to look at types of litter campaigns they can have and things they can take forward through their eco committees or their eco work. And the secondary schools, again, a very similar picture on the eco work and the litter. And I think we've recently won a national award in partnership with the Literati campaign, looking at litter initiatives, specifically linked to the Clyde, and that was with Clyde View. So the secondary schools very conscious of the litter aspect of it. And also looking at the single use, and what we're saying in secondary schools is it's more complicated than primary schools. Secondary school pupils secondary schools are competing with fast food outlets, and we want to be in a position where we are making sure that all young people who want to stay for meals do so. So we have to be very careful that we're not creating an unintended consequence by making the meals less convenient, so the young people go elsewhere, and the equivalent of that would be £487 in a parent's pocket if children opted to go for meals elsewhere. However, that does not mean we are not committed to it. We are committed absolutely to reducing and stopping the use of single-use plastic. We met with parent councils and we discussed the pros and cons of this. And what parent councils very much felt was that there are lots of initiatives that they can take forward as parent councils and that they can do with the schools. What we came to the conclusion that we would not recommend a rule that parent councils cannot use single-use plastic, but that they would do that as part of a community initiative and perhaps get buy-in from the school community and young people themselves. And we've heard sometimes about parent councils starting that and looking at alternative ways, but we also have to be pragmatic at things like discos, spillages, and actually the parent councils being able to conduct events. IL, when we've met IL, again, a commitment to work alongside Literati, and they have sponsored some of the campaigns, and they are committed to reducing single-use plastics, but what they're saying is that this will take time. All of the vending machines are set up for different types of bottles, so they've got to look at how that would work through the system, but that doesn't mean they're not committed to it. It just means that they need time to take it forward. If they were to cease the use, it would be approximately £180,000 per annum, and that would be money we would need to reinvest into revenue for IL. Otherwise, they may have to stop doing different activities. So hopefully, a positive campaign, a positive report. We have to take questions.
Okay, but thanks for that. I suppose I should start with saying very much, and thank you again. This came from Councillor McKay via the Literati group. Sorry, I'm making my teeth fixed within the slide. So again, it's a member request via a community group within the slide. I'm going to bring Councillor Moran in first, and he was the first one on the chat. Robert.
Hi, thanks, convener. I should say I really endorse this initiative. And going back on the time when we started recycling Inverclyde, and I was the convener, we went to East Ayrshire to see how they done it. And we come back to Inverclyde, and the officers with me that day, we all agreed that the only way we get it to work in Inverclyde was free education. And in education, we went into the primary schools and we really found that the young people were ready to endorse the recycling message. Not just them, but maybe their grandparents as well. So it was a good start we had in them days. But also remember, convener, you might do yourself, we had pictures of water in the council, in the chambers, in glasses, before we went to plastic bottles. So we should maybe do show a wee bit of initiative for ourselves in them chambers. Also, I think these initiatives are always good, but it's logistics of all this. What is logistics of getting them to use to stop using plastic bottles? And I give you a suggestion here. The Scottish Water is always on the television saying it's water, it's free, it's yours, and we'll give you a bottle to put it in and to drink out of. So why don't we contact Scottish Water and say, we agree with you, you give us a bottle for every school child in Inverclyde. And if it was in the secondary schools, they've all got lockers, they can keep it the bottle in the locker. And if it's in the primary schools, there are classroom settings where they can keep it in the classroom. And it's not as if it's hard to put a name on a bottle. That way you would have them all having their own bottle and stop using plastic bottles for water anyway. That would be a start, in my opinion. For the rest of the juice, you can go to the, you know, when you talk about they go outside, they go to the shops round about the schools to buy food at dinner time. Well, why don't I ask them shops to bring in them special cups you get down in England and Glasgow where your name's on it and you get a discount if you use it? There's so many initiatives that we could use if we have the time and the energy to do it. So all I would say is, let's ask Scottish Water to give us these bottles for the kids. We can keep them in schools, and that's going some way to try and help the single-use of plastic on water at least.
Thanks, Robert. I'll let Ruth comment on those suggestions. Ruth?
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said, Councillor Moran. My experience of this is it's bringing the young people with us. If you, having turned up with 300 plastic bottles and given them out to the young people, if they're not buying into it, quite often, you know, the next day the 150 turn up and they've left them at home. So my own experience and my firm belief is that this is done grassroots up. Now the young people are challenging us. They're asking us what they were pushing at us to turn the water fountains back on so they could fill up their own back bottles. But I think we have to have the buy-in as we take this forward in any initiative we do.
Okay, thanks, Ruth. Robert Sulky?
Yeah, I still say, you know, Scottish Water's happy to give out these bottles. Why don't we ask them for them?
I'll leave that with Ruth and I'll bring Elizabeth in.
Thanks, Convener. My question is about the Inverclyde leisure side of things. I'm just looking at what is a statement on our paper saying that we can't cease the use of single-use plastic without additional financial investment. And I'm just wondering, we've got a figure of £180,000 there. How do we reach that? Or what's the kind of the calculation that's been made to say it's going to cost £180,000 to stop using single-use plastic in Inverclyde leisure?
So that figure came from Inverclyde Leisure themselves. It's not the totality of what they would make from their revenue from all of their catering, but that I think is specifically linked to their vending machines. But I can't give you the exact figures on that, so I can get them to you.
So we're basically saying that Inverclyde Leisure make £180,000 a year out of.
It wouldn't. Don't quote me on that one. I would need to go back to Kieran and absolutely check whether or not that's the total amount you make from the vending machines, or if that only takes into account single-use plastic. But that's when I asked him what the financial implications for ceasing single-use plastic bottles would be. That's the figure he came back with.
Can I ask for some more detail on that, really, because it seems like, well, if you want us to do this, we need £180,000, but also I'd like to know that the figure was taken into account. Well, actually, by not selling single-use plastic bottles, we're also able to sell X number of branded IL bottles or other receptacles, which would be an income source for them, as well as to replace the what they can't get from the vending machines. So I'd like to see that all these things have been factored in rather than a bald figure.
So it was, and certainly that they're on board with this, and there wasn't, but I did need to come to this committee with the the actual implication of them stopping at the moment and a rough amount of money for what the implication would be. Because if this committee was to say we would like them to stop, then they're saying this would be in the region of £180,000. But I can get more details.
It does seem a very rough figure.
I would like.
Whether or not they've taken into consideration every bit of profit they get from vending machines and their own cafeterias, but Ruth will find that information out. I'm looking to see if we'll get David, will you want to comment? Councillor Wilson? No, David's got a comment here. We need to allow IL to conduct their own business.
Yeah, I think we need to be careful we're not seen as busybodies here. IL have got to run their own business, they've got to make their own profit. It's a tough market out there, they've got competition. I don't think it's our job to interview.
Okay, thanks.
IL are asking for £180,000. You know,
yeah.
So
subsidising this.
Anyway. I think what we've actually got, Ruth is going to try and flesh out that figure a bit, right? So whether 180,000 and what a more realistic actual figure and what the implications are for IL. Or whatever.
So are we being asked to pay the £180,000? I mean, because if we're not, then I guess Councillor Wilson's point is a fair point. If this is money that is expected to come from us to enable this to happen, then I don't think it's busybodying at all.
No, to be clear, IL are not expecting us to pay £180,000. What I asked the question was, if we stopped now selling any single plastic use bottles, what would the approximate financial implication? Because again, it's very difficult to put these to exact figures. They are not asking us for that money, and they are committed to reducing single-use plastic. But if IL have got to make money, we give IL a fee, but also they bring in revenue on top of the fee we give them. And they rely on that to run the business. So the totality of IL is not only through the council funding, but it's also the money they're bringing from their food and drink and also for their gym membership. To be clear, they're not asking us for any money, but if we were to make a decision saying we insist you do that, that is roughly what the loss to IL would be.
Okay, Elizabeth. Okay, I'm with any other members. Can we? Sorry, Francesca.
Thanks very much, convener, and thanks very much to Ruth for presenting a great report. So definitely welcome the potential to go single-use plastic free in the primary provision and to have in the secondaries. I think it's a good chance though to consider what happens next as a council in order to enhance and extend what we're seeing as part of this journey that you've outlined in the report. For example, reducing the single-use plastics that are brought into schools for young people in primaries and secondaries, looking at the single-use plastic usage in secondaries without the unwanted consequences that you've discussed, and enlisting further parent council buy-in to help promote the net zero goals. So I'm wondering if this is a chance to look at the introduction of a working group to see how we can get to where we need to be, while taking all the stakeholders with us, from young people to parents to school staff, so that we can measure the journey that you've sort of outlined in this report. Because I think it's safe to say that eco goals and convenience are never going to be natural partners, but we need to find ways of still making progress that young people, families and staff can all embrace.
Ruth?
A very good point. When we were working with the young people, they were of the opinion that we could revisit the eco schools initiatives. Now we old enough to remember that every school had an eco committee and went for green flag status. That's still on the cards. What I would say is probably the best working group is the ones in the schools themselves. We have got different eco committees now coming up, and certainly in the secondaries and in the primaries. So I would say that that's the best type of vehicle to get this initiative forward, because then young people are going to get the buy-in of their peers. They're going to be able to work towards, litter-free playgrounds, plastic-free, even plastic-free Fridays, the type of initiatives that we've had before.
Francesca.
Okay, so maybe we can keep with that on the agenda of looking at the working groups or the initiatives within the individual schools and how we're seeing that they're making sure that they've got that net zero single-use plastic off the agenda and keep in touch about that.
Okay, I think that's fair enough. So we'll remit to take a note to bring back further report and
Yeah, because I think
we'll put it to you within the year anyway, I would expect. Okay, is that fine, Francesca?
okay, yeah, because I think awareness raising is great, and I think it would be good to keep an eye on that. Thanks very much.
Is that okay, everyone? Can we agree with that? Now, the next item on the agenda is now a private item. So what I'll actually do is I'll then go into private recess. And Jackie, that means that you'll need to leave us. You're more welcome to come back to hang around and back at 4 o'clock.